and to everyone attending today's session of this third session of the Legistech for Democracy Forum. Louise, really, you are creating for us a great way to, on an annual basis, mark the International Day for Democracy. I want to thank you at Bússola Tech for inviting me here. Congratulations on putting together yet again a very rich space for parliaments to engage in this dialogue. I'm always impressed that you do manage to keep us all motivated for an entire week of activities, and the conference this week looks amazing. I do feel privileged to get this opportunity to open the second day of the conference, even if it's a little early in the morning. And I'm here to give some general reflection, as you say, on how the importance of parliamentary diplomacy as a driver for legislative modernization. Really, I see it as we convene this week to discuss legislative modernization and how we can be agents in each of our respective capacities to continuously improve the work of parliaments so that they better serve the citizens of our countries. We all know democracy takes work, and the International Day for Democracy is a day to remind us that it is for each and every one of us to be intentional in our work to ensure our democratic institutions, and in particular for this audience, our parliaments, are strong and healthy. We therefore need to invest in our institutions if we want them to perform well. And so I truly believe that having a willingness to learn from the experiences of others and apply this learning towards innovating processes and procedures within parliaments is an important investment in protecting and enhancing our democracies. So as you know, ParlAmericas is the interparliamentary organization that's governed by the national parliaments of the Americas and the Caribbean, created in 2001 with the mandate to strengthen parliamentary participation in the inter-American system and to promote cooperative political dialogue and interparliamentary exchange on legislative practices to address issues of common concern affecting the hemisphere. Technology and digital platforms have shaped not only the way people communicate and work, but also how public institutions provide services to citizens. And modernization through digital transformation is having a profound impact on how parliaments work from an administrative and operational standpoint, and how parliamentarians work, both within parliament and throughout their constituencies. For this reason, digital transformation and the democracies in political discourse has become an important hemispheric and global issue and a major priority topic at ParlAmericas. Because I've been asked to speak to the role of parliamentary diplomacy as a driver for legislative I have been asked to speak today about parliamentary diplomacy as a driver for legislative modernization. And it was precisely through parliamentary diplomacy that a core group of Latin American parliaments worked together to create what has become a collaborative community of support and coordination to share practices, guide progress, and encourage actions among themselves and the national parliaments of this hemisphere and around the globe to manage and innovate parliaments by applying an open parliament model. But what does that look like really? What do we mean when we say parliamentary diplomacy? In my opinion, this can be understood as a combination of things. It's both the act of parliamentarians and parliamentary staff from different countries coming together and building relations with peers, discussing issues and topics of mutual interest to the respective parliaments. And it's through this dialogue. It is the process of developing goals and articulating possible actions that begin taken as a result of those discussions. And these things become joint commitments, often called resolutions or declarations, that become an instrument for parliamentarians and parliaments to reference and motivate action and institutionalize follow-up at a national level. Making a commitment at a regional or international level can help create a sort of mutual accountability measure for action and follow-up at a national level. So the origins of the Open Parliament Network started in this very way, a declaration taken by convened Latin American parliaments known as the Santiago Declaration on Parliamentary Transparency and Integrity in Parliaments and Political Parties. This was done in 2012, hosted in Chile at a conference. And it called for the creation of an inter-American parliamentary network on transparency, access to public information, and probity. And over time, the parliamentarians who were committed to this idea were then able to work with each other jointly to reach out to peers and build broader interest and so on over the years until in 2015, the concept of committing to advancing open parliament as a way to modernize parliamentary practices across the hemisphere had become taken up by the ParlAmericas member parliaments. And the network, originally created by this handful of parliamentarians, became a permanent working committee at ParlAmericas. Why does this matter? Well, now the ParlAmericas Open Parliament Network and Open Parliamentary Staff Network have become a permanent forum for parliamentary diplomacy and continuous discussion for both legislators and legislative staff from across the hemisphere to engage with these topics in a continuous way. And this continues then to guide their work and ensure action is being taken at a national level through a co-creation process with civil society organizations from across the hemisphere. The parliamentarians and legislative staff who participate actively in this network developed a roadmap towards legislative openness, first developed in 2016, recently updated with a second edition in 2022. This roadmap is itself a tool of parliamentary diplomacy. It's a compilation of objectives and good practices to both inspire and guide parliaments on a pathway to strengthen and modernize parliaments and leverage the use of digital tools and platforms for increased transparency, accountability, citizen participation, and ethics and probity in parliaments. This week, participants will hear from a number of speakers giving different examples of how digital tools and innovation are being applied to enhance parliamentary processes and communication of information. So I will not use my time with you to listing out examples of actions being taken by parliaments. But I do want to highlight, however, perhaps some maybe non-traditional ways that I've been thinking about the concept of modernization of parliaments that have emerged since the pandemic accelerated a transition to the use of technology to allow for virtual participation in committee work and parliamentary sittings. Can we leverage the use of these tools to increase access and participation in parliamentary work and politics more broadly by persons who would not normally have access these spaces? Do a hybrid model of parliament allow for women or people in kind of a younger stage of life, both men and women, to contemplate working in parliament without feeling that taking on that job in parliament will impact their ability to have other parts of their lives, like having a family and commitments that will take at the home? We know that parliaments are often considered, parliaments need to think through their modernization process in a way that's going to be inclusive of people to work into their lives, how they can work in parliament, but also how they can have, productive lives outside of parliament. This will reduce barriers to women. And I say, at least in Canada, we see it here too, also men who want to be a participant in their family life. We're calling for a better sharing of care responsibilities in the home to increase the equality of women in the workplace. But that means then men who want to partake in the home also need to have a workplace that's going to be better suited to be able to conduct their business, do their work effectively, and also partake in home life. So I really think that some ways that we are thinking about how to use these models to increase the effectiveness of our these tools, these digital tools, to increase the effectiveness of our parliaments. We can't think just about how we're going to use them kind of in an administrative sense of greater data or information or et cetera, but also how are we transforming how our parliaments work to make sure that they are more effective, both for to how we can deliver for citizens, but to ensure that it also allows a greater plurality of voices within parliaments, that people want to take on the work of working in parliament because they see it as a workspace that can be amenable to their lifestyles. So I think that's another way that we have to think about how we're using digital tools to modernize how parliaments function and work. I guess as we get towards the end of my time, I'm sure I'm getting there, Louise. I do want to highlight, though, that before the pandemic, parliaments in Latin America were making important investments to modernize processes and procedures with increasing use of digital solutions and tools. But with the pandemic, the uptake in this transition increased exponentially. And for many countries, it was through the use of parliamentary diplomacy and networking spaces, such as ParlAmericas or forums such as this one, that many countries were able to essentially leapfrog ahead. They built on the lessons learned and solutions applied by other parliaments. So again, in this way, it's showing how parliamentary diplomacy and peer exchange among parliaments, building kind of a sense of community, can really support, drive modernization and more and an effective transition in this regard. I think through technology, but before I get to concluding, we are here to talk about, I believe, for the most part, digital tools and how we're using digital tools to modernize parliaments, to improve and make parliaments more effective in our work. We do have to remember that while they provide an opportunity for innovative approaches and solution, parliaments can't lose sight of the fact that right now, as it stands, all citizens currently don't have equal access to technology. And so this also needs to be a priority in our countries, to develop and implement national strategies to promote universal access and accessibility to digital content, to digital tools, to make sure that all citizens can participate equally in our democratic spaces as we are evolving our democratic spaces to make use of these tools. And again, here's where diplomacy and parliamentary diplomacy is going to be really important. We saw at the recent 9th Summit of the Americas, where leaders gathered in Los Angeles, there was commitment made by the countries towards this goal of universal access and accessibility to digital content, to understanding that for the countries of this hemisphere to thrive and prosper, we need to make sure that all citizens have access to these tools, these very powerful tools, the ability to get on the internet and work with these tools. And so as ParlAmericas work has done over the years and will continue to do, we look at those commitments made in multilateral spaces by our governments, and we work, the parliaments take on kind of the work to then continue to hold governments accountable to those commitments, but also to work jointly as parliaments and parliamentarians, and how through legislative action, they can also advance progress on those commitments. And so I think, again, that diplomatic tool, that declaration taken by the leaders of the countries of this hemisphere towards ensuring that there's going to be access and accessibility for all citizens to the internet, to being able to use digital content, to using digital tools for their work, their lives, will, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. No, but it's going to be very important because we are taking note of that commitment. That is an instrument that would also allow the parliaments to really drive forward and ensure that their citizens are being served this way, that their countries are creating these types of national action plans to ensure that this accessibility is there. All right, moving to my conclusion here. I guess I just want to reiterate, because we are here marking the International Day for Democracy this week, I truly believe that having a willingness to learn from the experience of others and to apply this learning toward innovating processes and procedures in parliaments is going to be, it's truly an important investment in protecting and enhancing our democracies. And as demonstrated through our experience at ParlAmericas, leveraging peer exchange and parliamentary diplomacy to foster a sense of common goal and purpose, and to build political will to advance these processes has significantly contributed to the uptake and an ongoing commitment by parliaments to advance open parliament actions. Now more than ever, our parliaments need to be more effective, and they need to be seen to be more effective. Citizen trust in parliaments is low, which is undermining the stability of our democracies. Transparency is critical to rebuild citizen confidence. A healthy democracy requires an engaged citizenry that can access information and contribute to political discourse. In my opinion, applying open parliament principles to modernize parliaments, which includes leveraging digital tools and technologies, will make parliaments more effective in serving their role in our democracies. And healthy democracies contribute to better governance outcomes, and that contributes to a more peaceful and prosperous world. Again, thank you, Louise, for giving me this opportunity to be here to get today started. And I wish you the very best with today's sessions. I guess I turn back to you.